What happened to
Hello
starting?
again, this is Charlie Bellefontaine, and hello again, this is Charlie Bellefontaine, and you're listening to the Chicago. Need to quiet down, please.
Can we start?
Joey Mathews, a retired goofy. Walt Disney World College Program 2002.
I thought you
the VA
had a
loan.
gag order about that.
Whoa.
Well, that was actually
Well,
part
we
of
don't
the
talk
problem.
about why I'm no longer.
Oh,
That
okay,
was,
good.
that was part of the problem. Was,
He could send you a video. It's pretty good.
Good time. So anyway,
Not
Joey
allowed.
Mathews, the VA Loan Nerd, NMLS 1330694. You can find me at thevaloannerd.com. Across all the social medias as at the VA Loan Nerd. You can find me talking about why the market's all fun today, and that will be because the Consumer Price Index came in hot. Came in at 3.3% year over year. The month over month wasn't bad, but it's a year over year number, especially at the beginning of a year when it's really hard to usually try to go conservative. So they said they expected 3.1% year over year increases for goods, came back at 3.3%. So we're seeing we're about 50 basis points down in the mortgage-backed security market. The 10-year Treasury is trading at a 10 bips higher yield. Whenever the Treasury trades higher, rates move higher. That's why we're seeing the basis points on the rate sheets increase. I will say that
the
I will
CPI
say
increases
there was
all
a good
eggs.
amount of lenders who were pricing pretty conservatively yesterday. I was just price checking, and so we may not see a ton of movement today from those lenders that were staying conservative yesterday. But if they were aggressive in their pricing yesterday, then obviously you're going to see more movement towards on the VA side towards 7, on the or Govy side towards 7, on the conventional side over 7. But hey, at the end of the day, buy your houses, people. Buy your houses. And Jay Powell is talking right now, so I'm going to watch my closed caption on here and watch my market at the same time. We're having fun.
No, I love it. Steve, please give me an intro.
Steve Davis, Real Brokerage, Kamar Group, your residential realtor. You can find me on Instagram. I'm Steve Davis. And on Facebook.
Sorry.
Your turn.
I just didn't know if you were still going or not. Patrick, please.
Steve, I'm gonna just slide this your way.
No, I got
Is
one.
that the coffee?
I got
friend,
one. I got one right here.
You, wake up, buddy! Come on, let's go. It's the Chicago housing experts.
Wow.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah, we're doing it. Okay. This is a serious show about serious real estate topics. Just you wait. If you stuck around with us this long, God bless you. But I'll tell you what, we are actually going to talk about some things. And boy, there are going to be some things. I'm Patrick Loftus. I'm a lawyer. You know what that means? It means that I did 3 extra years of school. And that's it. It's really it. I passed an exam, and I get to call myself a lawyer. If you want to find out what this lawyer's up to, find this lawyer on social media. On Instagram, Loftus_law. Find me on TikTok, Loftus Law. And look at my shorts on YouTube Shorts.
Gonna love it for some reason. My name is Charlie Bellefontaine. I own Chicagoland Home Inspectors. Today, we got into a little bit of a debate this morning, and I want to kind of continue it a little bit.
I was right.
I was right.
always right.
I'm about to be right.
Yeah.
Amen to that. So
That's awesome.
key letters and acronyms, and those of you that have heard me talk about this stuff before, I hate acronyms just because I never know or can remember what the heck they mean. So we're going to go with MLS, PLN, TAN, and then what's not an acronym is Zenlist, and I'm sure there's a few other things out there as well. But the real thing is when you're listing your home for sale, it's, the argument was, why wouldn't you get as much exposure as possible to sell the house as fast as possible? I just can't, I'm just having trouble grasping the rationale from the numbers. I want as many people to see my property so people can bid on it and I get the highest price. And Steve, you're telling me that's a bad thing to do.
So, no, I'm not saying it's a bad thing to do.
What a loaded
Well,
question.
I'm saying you're saying it's a bad thing to do.
So, that's not what I'm saying. So, when you're listing a property, you have 2 options, well, multiple options, but what I advise clients to do, depending on the market, depending on what's going on, as far as the, where the buyers are at, what the market's doing, that sort of thing, how you're going to get the most exposure, get the most amount of money, hopefully waive appraisal, hopefully get multiple offers, that sort of thing, is you have options, right? So when you're selling your house, I believe that it's smarter to make it so that it's not live right away. And the reason being is because you keep all the leverage. And as a seller, as soon as you put it on the market, the clock starts. Now, that's not a bad thing sometimes, but it all depends if it's priced right, if it's marketed right. But the biggest aspect to this is that you have to be strategic when you list your property. And too many agents and too many sellers think, oh, let me list it higher and then I'll get lots more people because, for whatever reason, they're going to want to pay more. Well, guess what? They don't. So what I always recommend my clients doing is put it on the PLN, which is the private listing network. That allows you to keep the leverage, as I mentioned.
How? Explain how that helps me keep the leverage.
Sure. So if you have it on the PLN, the agents are basically, they set up a search for their clients, and automatically that will go to their clients based on search criteria, in location, price point, bedroom sizes, all that fun stuff.
Who has access to that, though? I mean, you're saying it goes on to the PLN and it's there, but does everybody see it?
No. So consumers don't see it, but the agents do. Now, the consumers that do see it are the ones that are actually already working with those agents. What it tells allows for to happen is that the people that are looking feel more like they're getting a deal, like they're able to see the property first. And therefore, they don't have to worry about the crazy exposure that's happening in the market. So there won't be 27 buyers. There'll only be like 4 or 5 buyers, potential buyers. So there won't be as much competition. Now, why that's beneficial to the seller or why it's negative to the seller, the positive aspect to the seller is that they keep the leverage in regard to not as many people seeing it, being able to charge more money, being able to say, I'm not going to do anything, I'm not going to fix anything, I'm not going to, whatever, which in turn will make it so that they get more money because no agent that has a client that could potentially buy this property is going to come in and say, oh, well, let me give you a deal, right? So in other words, let me give you a lowball offer. So as the seller, you have the leverage of saying, no, I'm only going to take full price or over ask offers. And if you're a good agent representing that client, you're going to instruct your seller, listen, here are your options. And this is why this is beneficial. And this is why maybe it's not. As soon as you get on the market, so on the MLS, so in other words, when you're live, Charlie, it means that now everyone's seeing it correct. But what happens if it's not priced right? What happens if it's not marketed right? That property sits. Time starts, and then your property will look vulnerable. And then what does a good agent do? That property's been on the market for 32 days, and this average market time, it should have gone in a weekend. So I'm going to lowball offer on it. So you did not play the game the right way, and therefore you may actually get lowball offers and get less money for your property. So the best way to do it, in my opinion, is to put it on a private market so that it creates urgency, chaos, excitement, and more importantly, like I said, the seller keeps the leverage.
So my ADD kicked in. When do you have the conversation with your buyers and sellers about the word leverage or power?
Immediately.
And immediately.
Immediately. Yeah, absolutely.
Even
because
while
this
they're
market
searching.
Yeah, because this market is brutal. It is very tough. The fact is there's no inventory. The rates aren't going down like they were before. Like they're not in the threes ever again. And they need to know what they're up against. Yeah. Listen, if you want a deal right now, you shouldn't buy. Period. If you want,
I don't. I might argue that a little bit. I mean, you can't tell what's a deal or what isn't a deal. I mean, if I buy a house that's $50,000 overpriced, but the house prices shoot up over the next year $300,000, I got a good deal.
Yeah, but you don't know that.
That's
no one has
point.
A crystal ball.
Nobody does, and that's where
the closest person is Joey.
It's Joey, and it's true, I guess, in its own way. But I guess I get confused because when I do my Zoom follow-up calls with our clients, I constantly get asked, well, should I ask for this? Should I do this? And it's like, that's the one thing I don't know. I don't know how much leverage you have. And then I find myself explaining to my clients what leverage means. And you know what? Maybe it's better to hear it from Patrick, because that's kind of a legal word in its own way.
Well, or the agent. You should never answer that question. That puts you in a predicament where it's kind of like them asking you, hey, how much is this going to cost for me to fix? And you being, let's say you were a contractor for 25 years, you could potentially answer that. But what happens if you answered it wrong, because that's not your job anymore?
Well, and I do answer that, first of all. I do like to give out the quotes, but there's third-party cost estimating systems out there that we can go ahead and use, and they're free. And I can get the links and put the zip codes and what the work is, and I can get that into them. And as far as explaining to people what the leverage is, you know, there's a lot of stuff that I just don't know. I don't know how hot the market is. I don't know what the property is worth. I don't know what you're willing to pay. I don't know how much you want to buy the house. I don't know how much the sellers want to sell the house. There's too many variables involved there for me to tell somebody what they should negotiate for or not negotiate for. And Patrick, I need a little backup on this. Do you know that stuff when they're asking you about, you know, negotiating things? How much leverage they have?
No, look, I really don't particularly care for that word, leverage, power, however you want to say it. You know, we have, you know, this position in the deal. Every deal has its own characteristics.
True.
And so I do want to know, okay, so what came out on the inspection? You know, and here's the list. Okay, cool. So, you know, where are you at, buyer? Okay, so if you are a first-time home buyer, you're getting an FHA loan, you're not putting a lot of money down because you don't have a lot of liquid cash savings, but you've got a good job, the income supports what the payment's going to be, and you're ready to go forward with that. That person is in a weaker position to take on potential future expensive improvements that occur shortly after closing. And so that person, it's not so much about their leverage, it's about how much risk they're prepared to take on. Likewise, you may have someone who, you know, let's take the opposite end of the spectrum, someone who's flush with cash. Let's say that they're even a cash buyer. They're in the trades. Okay, maybe they're a carpenter, electrician, plumber, whatever. Yeah, I just did a closing last week. Client's an electrician. Everything that came back on the inspection, I kind of know that is for every electrical item is going to be to him a completely different scenario than if I'm dealing with someone who is maybe, I don't know, just about to turn 30 and, you know, they work a desk job. You know, the most they know about electricity is that there's a switch, you flip it up, you flip it down, and that's what it does. Charlie, if I was representing you or Steve, these conversations that you would have with respect to a real estate transaction would be different than if I'm representing Charlie, one of your stepchildren, Steve, one of your dogs who's buying, you know, a luxury dog house, you know, next door because they're sick and tired of your nonsense.
You could do that?
I mean, you can do whatever you want, man. It's America.
Amen.
All right.
Nope.
Anyways, listen. Before I let you wrestle this back, let me rewind this for a second because the context of this conversation I think is important because there's a larger debate going on within real estate about this concept of clear cooperation. The concept of clear cooperation is basically that there is an unwritten rule, if you will, that listings go on the MLS and that everyone is going to have access to all the listings. Now, Steve mentioned you've got the private listing network, you've got the TAN, Top Agent Network, Zenlist. You know, there's these other places where you can go and look at listings. So, you know, already I suppose there's some cracks in that unwritten rule. But the debate is basically there are companies like Compass, and I'll name them because they're not keeping this a secret.
Yeah.
And by extension, because they're merging with at Properties, which in Chicago is, I think they do the highest volume of any brokerage. So Compass and at are combining.
Highest market share.
Sure. What Steve said. They're combining, and the position that they take is that, look, all of the stuff that goes in the MLS, it then gets taken and it has been sold to companies like Redfin, Zillow, you name it. Whenever you do a real estate search, whatever comes up on the first page, that's all paid for information off of the MLS. All of the information that gets inputted to the MLS is paid for and produced by the brokers, by, let's just say Compass and and the brokers that are under those umbrellas. So they pay for the pictures. Steve, real estate pictures, they're not cheap, right? They write the description, data up there, and then it goes and it gets shifted off elsewhere, and they go, why is that? Why is our work going and being sold to third parties who are competing against us? That's not fair. Okay, that is an argument, all right. And so this is part of the debate, and I will cede control, or else I will.
No,
I will
I
cede
just
the
want to
tail.
go more on what you're saying.
Sure, but let me position the other
Yeah.
side, and then we can continue the debate. Which is, the other side is, look, from a consumer's perspective, why shouldn't I and my broker, whoever I select, I don't want to necessarily have to choose to play in the Compass at sandbox or the Baird and Warner sandbox or the this, that, or the other. I don't want to have all of these splintered off places where I may not even have access to what I have today, which is to essentially look and see what's on the market outside of what's on the private listing network and some of these other places. Now, one last thing, as far as from a consumer perspective, a seller, so that's from a buyer's perspective, consumer wise. From a seller's perspective, they say, well, hold on, I want to have the option of going private listing network or full MLS or just exposure to the top 10% of agents on Top Agent Network. So who's right? That's the debate, right? So, that's where this all comes from. Should we maintain status quo, which is, the clear cooperation and, these little other avenues to place your listing up there, or should we change?
No, you mentioned before about, I take all the pictures, I spend all the money on the real estate agent, I put it on MLS, and you give it to my competitors. But isn't the MLS more of a tool? It's kind of like, this radio station. They have commercials, and they have advertisers that go ahead and put their commercials on here. They're using this tool to go ahead and get their product out to the public. Isn't that really what the MLS is?
They're all tools.
They're all tools. So I guess that's the part that I'm still having trouble understanding is who are you giving your stuff to and how are they reselling it? Because you're just using that to advertise your product so that you can get the biggest bang for your clients.
So what at Encompass, I think by extension of taking this position, they want to have their own listing service, right? It will be the Compass at Properties listed, because I don't think they're actually it's not going to be Compass at Properties. They're still going to be two, it's going to be like, any two companies that appear to be competing but are actually, brother and sister, if you will. But they want to have their own sandbox. They want to have their own listing service where they have Compass and at listings, and I suppose they view that as a competitive advantage because I guess they back their brokers to have the best listings. That's the Pollyanna-ish way of looking at it. The more cynical side, which is usually where I fall, is that I think that really at the most basic of this debate is that a lot of realtors, first of all, they don't like the fact that things changed in August of last year. A lot of realtors, I think most, all right. But what they ultimately would love to do is, because, in the late 90s when these agreements were reached to syndicate all of the MLS listings to these websites, it was not foreseen that we would end up with what we have today, which is unfettered public access to effectively just about everything. I think a lot of agents would like to turn back the clock to before that happened so that they are the gatekeeper, more or less, of what is out there and available. That's what it used to be. You used to get this book. You had to pay dearly for it. If you wanted it came out every month. If you wanted early access to it, you had to sweet talk the person at your real estate office to get to be. They only had so many books per office, and it was kind of a nice place to be as a realtor. Now, you've got to deal with the fact that everyone, either knows everything or thinks they know everything. Steve, which one is usually more the case?
Well, the big thing is that as far as having your own listings and keeping them in house and that sort of thing, so within your own brokerage or whatnot, that actually is a disservice to your client. And the reason being is because if you do that, first of all, you're being selfish and you're trying to dual it, which means you're trying to bring your own buyer to your own sale, or your own buyer, your own sale. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where you're trying to get both sides, which means you're trying to get more money, which means you don't care about your client. And the fiduciary responsibility of your job, of being a realtor, one of the main things is to represent your client the right way and honestly. So therefore, this argument and this whole situation where they want to have their own listings, they want to have their own database, they want to have their own whatever, that was the same thing when I did rentals way back when. It was the same deal. But the fact is, if you found out that a guy named Charlie was selling his 2-2 or renting his 2-2 and it was going to be $2,500 and you are a client of mine and you were looking for that 2-bedroom, 2-bath for you and your wife, that I could reach out to you and say, hey, I have a property that's going to come up. It's not live yet. It's not on the market. No one knows about it. Let me get you in there first. Well, it's good in the aspect of saying, oh, well, I have a private listing and so on. But what happens if I had 5 of you and then it could go up to 3,000, right? So it's all about how your client wants you to handle it in regards to your seller, right? But it's also the fact of having the leverage which makes your seller feel like you're going to give them better service.
And isn't
Bring
that
them
our goal,
more
though,
money.
as real estate professionals? And Joey, I need you to pipe in on this. But our goal is to put our clients, all of us, in positions where we give them that advantage. We give them that extra leverage. For me, it's going to be giving them knowledge about the property. For Joey, it's going to give them kind of I hate to use the word guarantee, but I think it's accurate. When he pre-approves somebody, all right, we know this mortgage is going to go through. Patrick is another one. Everything's about giving you knowledge to help them make good decisions. Patrick has a little bit of a grin on his face.
I mean, why would you use the word guarantee about anyone sitting in this room?
No, you can't.
I'm sorry.
Shame
Can
on
you guarantee your work?
I will.
99%. What happened to
that?
that 1%? What happened to that one thing that you guys forgot to check? What happened if, someone has a problem with the way that you didn't handle one thing, but you handled better on something else?
If he's
You
betting
dealt with
9.99,
that
he's
with
doing
me.
great.
That's my point. That's my
Then I'm
point.
going to do the right thing. Am I perfect? No, but I'm going to make sure that my clients are protected.
But that's my point.
We make mistakes.
Right. We all make mistakes. It happens.
But we fix our
we've had this
mistakes.
conversation before, and once again, I'm going to have to disclaim what Steve Davis just said. Because of the responsibilities I have with and the agreements I have with my professional liability insurance my professional insurance
Carrier.
liability
I knew what you meant.
carrier, I have to suggest that I do not make mistakes, and anyone that wants to take anything said about making mistakes out of context, just know that when I sit down for a deposition and you play this for me, I'm going to stare you right in the face and go, that's right, I don't make mistakes.
Okay, well, that's not right. Joey, your thoughts, my friend?
The only loans that don't close on my end are related to the property itself. I think for a lender it can be a little bit easier to make sure you don't screw up, because if you're getting everything up front, your life's a lot easier, right?
Mhm.
If you know, and then obviously make sure you're upfront with your borrowers. Like, hey, don't change jobs. If you're going to, let me know now so I can pre-plan. Don't borrow money from the mob. Don't go buy a car. Don't go do all the silly things prior to closing. The only times that I've had issues are if a property doesn't appraise, things of that nature. But in terms of a client qualifying, if I send a pre-approval, that client's going to close if you have a house that's going to appraise.
Joey, I don't think my loan shark reports any of the debts
Mine
I
neither.
have to them to
but
any of the credit bureaus.
I'll see them deposits, baby. I'll see them
the
deposits.
undisclosed debt report, right?
I mean, it's only, what is Vito Nonek? I think it's 5% compounded on the interest weekly. I learned that from The Sopranos.
And what kind of idiot?
Was it 5%?
Compounded weekly.
Oh.
It's pretty heavy duty stuff.
What kind of idiot deposits that money into their family checking account? I mean,
The
that's
best kind of idiot.
that all goes into the Bitcoin in the mixer.
yes. We're having a good time.
Yeah.
But I also obviously understand what these guys are saying is, don't go out there and be like, hey, you're guaranteed because you got to cover your butt.
Oh, it's
is what it is.
it's a CYA aspect in our business, or
Those that are
CYB.
unaware, that means cover your arse, which I believe we're allowed to say arse on radio.
Arse, yes.
Arse, yeah.
CYB. There it is.
Right. So
Cover your own butt.
I like
Yeah,
that.
I'll give you my knee-jerk reaction to this debate, this clear cooperation debate, is that as a consumer on the buyer side, I don't like the notion that there's going to be some opaque wall between whatever agent I hire
I don't like it either.
and some percentage of the available listings.
Yeah.
That to me feels wrong. Now, if the whole point is to turn around and try to sell access to the Compass at Sandbox, I mean, congratulations on being extra greedy, but what else is new in that industry? And yeah, I threw a brick, and so throw one back if you want. But
Survival of the fittest is what some of the agents out there are like, and they don't care. I
Well-
just dealt with one. It was
there are plenty who say it should be all mine, and anyone else that's trying to compete with me, I will battle them to the death. And well, many of those people with that attitude are tremendously successful. And man, you don't want to be anywhere near them if you're also in that business. You can certainly be successful without having that kind of reputation, I suppose. But conversely, on the seller side, that consumer choice option looks a little different, right? So Steve articulated earlier that there are advantages to being published on a limited basis on a private listing network or on a top agents network or whatever it is, because you get to test the market without taking any damage with respect to the time on the market. You get to test out maybe some different pricing strategies without getting, again,
No, I see that as
damaged.
valuable.
And so, if we're strictly talking, the reason we have the private listing network as it is today is because there were private entities previously that they were pay to play, like TAN, and that was seen as being anti clear cooperation, and there was still broad agreement that's still the thing we're all doing. So if I'm not mistaken, Steve, you correct me if I'm off base here, but the private listing network is like a branch of the MLS, or it is maintained by the multiple listing service. It's just not the regular published MLS.
correct. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just a way of basically the reason I use it, and I tell my clients to use it, is because when you put it on the PLN, people start seeing it that are set up on specific search optimizations, as I mentioned, right? And then what happens is that agent will get a call from their client, or maybe their agent will reach out to their client and say, hey, there's this new property at 1234 Main, and you've been wanting to live over there, and I think this is perfect. Let me reach out to the client, the agent that is representing it, and saying, hey, can we get in there before the open house, or when can we see the property? And so what will happen is that agent will reach out, and most of the time the agent that's representing the property will go ahead and do private showings. So what they'll do is the buyer, the consumer, will feel special that his or her agent got them in to see the property before maybe the general public. But what it also does is maybe there's that one agent, now there's 10 agents, now there's 15, now there's 20, and they're all hitting that interested button type thing. And then the agent from on the other side, so the seller's agent, that would be me at this point, would be able to see those 10 agents that have it, reach out to them directly and say, hey, I'm doing, a couple hours on Saturday from 2 to 4 where I'm specifically allowing the people from this to be able to see the property first. What that does is you put everyone at the same time within that for those 2 hours or whatnot, and it creates chaos, interest, scarcity. People need to make a decision quickly.
It's just great for a seller.
Exactly.
A seller's going to love that. A buyer is going to go, I hate this.
Right.
And by the way, let me just as an aside, whenever I see anything in the media, and maybe I should include social media, because it's not just articles written in either conventional, like, newspaper, magazine, whatever, it's all online anyway. I'm not picking up actual papers, but whether it's that or if I see it in social media, by and large, when we talk about, I hear the word housing crisis, and I'm like, first of all, that is massively hyperbolic. All right. Let's just,
that's like the bubble.
Well, it is overstating the situation, but let's be very clear here that whenever people are talking about how the cost of housing has gone up, and it's all of these things that are viewed as sort of consumer negative, completely ignores the fact that there are consumers also on the other side of all of these transactions. By and large, the corporate ownership that is so vilified out there is an extremely small percentage of who owns real estate, and especially here in Chicago area, very little of outside of like high-rise apartment buildings. Obviously that's a different story, but like if you're talking about single-family detached or small multifamily housing that we have here in Chicago, at most you're going to have a sort of local person who maybe has a significant number of units that they own and have under management, but by and large, these are going to be small business owners. And when you talk about housing's so expensive, this is so there's consumers on each side of that. It's not like when eggs go up and you're dealing with Amazon when you're buying them at Whole Foods, or we're talking eggs because eggs are they're still expensive even though we got a new president. I don't know how that happened, but so in any event, I really wanted to interject that into the conversation because I just get annoyed that the fact that narrative seems to be so one-sided when I see it out and about.
And I agree. And the fact is that as the seller's agent, I have to represent the seller the right way. But when I'm representing a buyer and I'm explaining that to them, like, listen, I can get you into this property, but you have to understand that they're going to take a full price or over ask. They're not going to give you a deal. They're not. I mean, it's very, very, very unlikely they're going to give you $5,000 off or do anything if you need anything fixed, repaired, replaced, whatever.
Well, I think
because they feel they have all the power.
100%.
Well, I listen. Once you get into the transaction, those things can kind of evolve. But I think setting that as the expectation gets the buyer to the right mental place to at least understand that what they're offering here, this isn't like we're trying to get something under contract so then we can get another crack at maybe negotiating something down to where we actually want to be.
A lot of people think that way.
Negotiate where wherever you end up has to be somewhere in the band of places where you're comfortable being. If you end up outside of that band, we're almost likely not going to be able to get you back in within that band. It's not 2018. It's not 2010. The market isn't what it was back then. It's not 2030. Market's going to be different in 2030. Heck, the market's going to be different in 2026, 2027. We don't know what's going to happen. Okay, you can wait and wait. The people that waited last year because they were reading the tea leaves and saw that we might be back closer to 6, maybe even a little bit under, and now they're sitting there today going, when I decided to hold off on moving forward. It looks awfully good right now, Joey, don't you think?
I would say that it looks fantastic right now.
your buyers that you qualified in like July, August last year, what are they thinking about their
Yeah,
rate?
that's a good question.
They're thinking, man, oh man, I wish I had jumped on that when this house was 50 grand less.
And-
Yeah,
that's the whole
prices
thing.
Still keep going up.
And that's the thing. Joey just nailed something real quick. That whole thing where there's no inventory, all right, and the rates are where they're at. And what do you think's going to happen? The prices are not going to go down.
Not as long as there's no supply.
Exactly. So when you waited and the rate was higher, and now it's the rate same or higher or maybe a little bit lower. What are prices doing? I mean, I've seen properties, and my clients even ask, they're like, wait, the property was $825, now it's $850, and they just take it off for like 10 days, and now it's back on for $850. Why? And it's
because they can.
Exactly. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to sell.
No.
But what it tells the consumer, the buyer, wait, well, I don't want that property anymore because of this. And then you have to preempt it as the agent of theirs and say, this is what you're up against. And I told you this 3 months ago. I told you this 6 months ago. And Joey told you in the middle of July that this is what is going to happen, most likely.
Well, if you try to resist the market, all that is going to do is the market's going to beat you.
Yeah, you never chase the market. It's not a good idea.
I mean, when I say resist it, I mean
Any
you go,
market.
You go, well,
Right, exactly.
I'm not going to buy unless I get a dealer. I'm not going to buy unless I get this interest rate. I'm not going to. All that is going to do is going to defeat you. And whatever your point in getting into the market is in the first place, is probably to find housing that is more suitable for your family. If you say to yourself, if this is the internal conversation, I could afford to pay X, but I just can't see doing that. And I am going to wait until interest rates change, or I'm going to wait until something different happens in the market. The thing that happens different in the market is rates could go up. The thing that could be different in the market is that the cost of the price of houses go up. Don't assume that at some point in the near future that it's going to get better.
There's a lot of people, though, that think that, that's part of their game. I just want to go ahead. I'll give them the high price, and then I'm going to go ahead and negotiate down on it.
Yeah.
And I
This is not a car.
Well, some people treat it that way. That's the point I'm
Well,
trying to make.
they need to stop. They need to go back into renting.
A lot of
everybody's
investors
different.
like to play that game.
Well, investors are
this is-
different.
well, even buyers, I get that too, and I just don't understand. Like when they get to my point and my level where I'm at in the transaction, so they've already signed a paper, we've done the inspection, and now they're going to get ready for the parts. Okay, I want to get this price off and this price off, and they know about a lot of this stuff already. And I'm just listening, and I'm like, this is, I don't know. To me, it's just unethical. Like,
Charlie, let me see if I can
too much of a goody two shoe.
Let me see if I can give you an idea of what is going through a lot of people's heads. So, I'm gonna mess up the numbers here, but the point is gonna be the same. So, they polled a class of law school students, and they asked them, where do you think you stand in terms of vis-a-vis the rest of the students in your class? Do you think that you are average, below average, above average? And something like 3/4 of them said in this poll that they are above average. Now, that math doesn't work out, right? 75% of the student body of that particular law school class can't be above average when compared to their classmates. And the reason I bring up that what seems like a complete non sequitur is that, like people's overestimation of how they stand amongst their classmates, I believe that there are areas where people overestimate how savvy they are. They think that they can walk into a car.
More.
They think they can walk into a car dealership and get one over on the car dealer. You can't.
No.
That guy does it every day. You're going to go and buy a handful of cars in your entire life. You'll lose.
I lost.
And a house is quite similar in that you and the seller both think that they are absolutely bang on savvy negotiators, and so you're gonna butt heads, and you both probably suck.
I got an example after that.
You both
Go
probably
ahead.
suck at it, by the way, and that's why when all the bluster is done, they go, I have to have this, and if I don't get it, then I'm walking. And then when the seller goes, absolutely not, they go, fine, but I'm not going to be happy about it. And then and you go, well, at least we got there for you, because the win is that you should be buying this house, and whether or not you feel. I've had clients walk into closings with me and they go, oh, I'm losing money on day one. And I look over, I go, in 2 years' time, come ask me whether or not you've lost money. And I know 2 years later that they've got $200,000 in equity, sitting in their pocket. I'm just like, man, if only you knew what I knew, but that's just who you are. You're never going to be happy.
My dad died young, and he taught me a whole bunch of facts of life that I needed to remember. And they were always really dumb things, but boy, did they stick. One of them was pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered.
Yeah, that's a good
You've
one.
heard that.
Oh, yeah,
All
of course.
Absolutely.
I thought my dad made it up.
Words to live by.
I believe it is. It's okay to get a little bit greedy, but when you start pushing that line. Now, and the part that I just have so much trouble understanding is, why would somebody want to go through that roller coaster ride multiple times? If you don't want to buy a house with this many defects, then why aren't we learning how to recognize these defects before we put the agreement down? A lot of these things are out in the open and everybody could see them, but then they still go ahead and buy it, and I think they really do know the defects are there. And then they go ahead and buy it, then they want to negotiate, then they bail it out. I'm not going to give my services for free, all right? I'm going to be paying every time we do it. I get it, the rest of you guys, I don't think you guys get paid if a deal gets killed, right?
Well, some people charge retainer fees in regard to the real estate
So
world.
I think you should.
I don't do that.
No?
Because the thing is that, maybe it gets to that point eventually, but at this point, I'm with you until the thick of the thin, right? So I'm with you until it happens. And if that takes one time, 16 times, or 3 years, well, 3 years is a long time. But if it takes 6 months, it takes 6 months. If it takes a year, it takes a year. The fact is that the retainer fee aspect is something where I think it's just saying, hey, this is a way that, you better do something quick. Otherwise, you're just going to pay me a retainer fee, and then you're also going to pay me this. I think that's not a great service. Now, I think it's important because you don't want to work for free. Nobody does, right? But at the same time, sometimes you say, okay, well, this is what it costs to do business. So, I think it also depends on the circumstance. And really, my thing is, what I used to do with the rentals is I used to say, all right, it's $1,000 to hire me. However, when you buy that property for $1,500, I'll give you that $1,000 back. Or you know what I mean? You'll get the money back. Or it's a deposit, or whatever it is. But I always give it back. It's just telling them, and it makes it so they understand that I'm serious. And I'm not just going to, willy-nilly and help you find a property, and then you're going to walk somewhere else and go. That's why, Patrick, you mentioned the whole thing on August 17th last year, excuse me. I actually was very nervous, right, at first. But then I've talked to a lot of higher-end brokers, such as myself, and producers, and it actually turned out to be a very positive aspect for me. Now, 73%, as you know, did 0 last year. And the fact is that it's going to weed out the weak.
I'm having a debate right now with another home inspector. I think he's out in Arizona area.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, keyboard cowboys me. And he was complaining that
What?
on Facebook, right? Because boomers go on Facebook, unite.
Wow.
Right, I'm going to call in all my peeps.
Dear Joey's like, oh, God.
I know, right? So, but he's like, I think it's unprofessional to say that you're the best when you're marketing out there. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I want to be the best. I think we should all be, saying that we're the best, and we should try to become the best where it comes to it. And this is kind of, you made me think of that when you were talking about being nervous in August. And you're right. Not everybody's going to be doing real estate business. It's just the way it is, So life is a competition. Another thing my dad taught me. Life is a competition out there. That doesn't mean we have to hate each other, lie, cheat, steal. But, man, make yourself better. Give yourself more value that you're going to be helping your clients. And if they could see that you become value, then you're the one in the corner with them.
Did you watch Super Bowl? There were 2 commercials on there. It's interesting you bring this up. Joey, did you watch Super Bowl?
I watched the Super Bowl.
Okay. Do you remember the commercial where the guy comes on and he's like, oh, the best is homes.com. The best is homes.com. The best is homes.com. And the attorney kept going, you're not allowed to say that. You're not allowed to say that. And they kept saying it. So it's interesting you bring that up because, okay, no one else saw that, evidently. But it's interesting you bring that up, Charlie, because.
I'll watch it on YouTube
I'm like.
or Facebook. Never mind. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Facebook Live? Is that
Yeah.
where the other. All right.
I was busy frying up chicken feet for my wife.
Oh, what?
Horrible.
So go on with the commercials.
I can't after that comment. The
True
point is,
story. So sorry.
is that
Let's go home.
It was horrific. It was absolutely horrific.
the point is, it's
I broke
Lost.
Steve.
The point's
I
gone.
broke
Way to
Steve.
go.
The point is, Steve, let me reorient you. You were watching a commercial, and they were making
best.
fun of the fact that you're not supposed to actually call yourself the best, and so they were
Correct.
doing this end around the thing, and then they were like, oh, by the way, we are the best. Huh?
I guess I break all
Oh,
the rules. They say we're not supposed to say mold and other stuff like that. And I'm like, mold.
It is a mold-like
You know.
substance.
I'm not even going any of that stuff.
should
You know?
should have tested by qualified mold testing.
What was that? Meet the Fockers? He was on an airplane and they
careful.
said he
Careful.
can't say bond or
bomb. Bomb, bomb, bomb. Bomb,
Yeah.
bomb, 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 bomb,
And he
bomb.
got kicked off.
They
like
kicked
that.
off the
That's what they
plane.
call it.
Yeah.
Don't say
Can you
that
milk
on
me,
the
Charlie?
plane.
Yes, I
Oh,
can.
wow.
Nope.
You know, but even with, I'm going to change up a little bit because I do want to change the subject
After
a
that.
tad.
Oh, you gotta change it real fast before the.
Amen. But Joey, I just had a house. Last week Friday we ended up having a whole bunch of rain and a lot of basements had water coming in, and during the heavy rain, a lot of water was coming in there. But yeah, during that heavy rain, the appraiser was there doing the appraisal. They
That
see the
sucks.
water coming in there, and now they want to get a structural certification.
What?
This is what happened.
Wow.
And Joey, how does
a stretch.
something like that? Do you get involved in any of that stuff? It just seems there. The drywall, everything else was there for a long time, like 30 years. You could see it wasn't painted. There's no water stains or anything else. This is a one-time deal. And
Yeah.
I don't know me. I signed off on it. I wrote everything
terrible
there.
timing.
We took thermal imaging. We took moisture meters. And I got no reason to believe that it's not a permanent problem. And I did sign off on an FHA cert for him, but it was
Hey.
weird.
Calling Charlie every time from now on. That's what all I heard.
Well, it's not, I'm not going to lie. If it's a problem, fix it.
Yeah.
Charles
No,
answered
the
everything.
appraiser's
It's
going to
fine.
say there was water intrusion. So yeah, we're going to need someone to sign off that it's been handled or that it's not going to be a future issue, right?
So if I'm getting a VA loan, how do I handle that? Do I have to get someone back out to certify that it's dry, or what? How do I do that?
If I have an appraiser who could sign off on a structural cert saying that they saw no evidence of intrusion, that it was a one-time event and whatnot, I mean, I could work with that.
So I don't have to send someone back out, spend another $200 just to get the appraiser
My
back
goal
out there.
my goal is to keep you to no. The appraiser's not going to go back out there no matter what,
Nice.
because they don't have to recertify. It's just getting a letter from a structural engineer named Charlie that
Well, it
says
doesn't have
that
to
it's
be a
good to go.
structural engineer.
Yeah.
That's-
But
You're a structural engineer.
I am
A
not
good
a structural
inspector, right?
engineer. Yeah.
A good inspector, so someone who's willing to put their name on the dotted line that you don't anticipate this being a problem in the future.
Charlie just has
And
he's
why?
got a stack of letters that says it's fine. He just signs and sends it off.
That is not
Otherwise,
true.
hey, if you got
That is
if you
not
got water
true.
intrusion problems, you're
Jeez,
gonna have
Charlie, I
to
should
drain
give you a
that thing.
call.
You got to build it out, make sure it doesn't happen again. But I mean, dude, I worked in Cicero, man. Every time it rained, we had to go to basements and pump out basements. It was ridiculous. Every house in Cicero floods, at least as far as I'm concerned, because that was my experience.
Well, it's the law. They have to flood. That's part of 1410.200 ILCS.
It's
That is the
What
law in
just happened?
Cicero.
It's not, but what I will say is that's what we call an in-ground pool. And
All
this,
houses are in-ground pools.
In-home pool, it's a moisture problem sometimes. I
this
guess.
time of year,
Well,
it's a skating
I mean,
rink.
Oak Park was known as Water Park, I thought, because almost all the basements always flooded because of the fact they were stucco and they're older units and homes and da 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 da. So, I mean, I could
You got a
guess
problem with stucco?
I have
No,
no
nothing-
problem with stucco.
no
at all.
problem with stucco as long as it's done the right way. Which how many places out there that are done the right way?
Probably not mine.
Charlie?
Water leakage. No,
Probably
no
not
place.
mine.
No place is ever done the right way. Everything is done has mistakes in it. And it all goes back to what you're willing to accept or not accept as a buyer or seller. That's the bottom line. And getting all that stuff out in the open. And to me, this was no big deal. The seller was aware of it. We were, able to show with the moisture readings and the thermal imaging readings that everything was dry after the week and there was no signs of past staining. I mean, when there's water coming in, we just did one yesterday. Water was coming in for a long time. You got the posts are all rotted, the doors are rotted, you got efflorescence everywhere else. And, somebody else is telling them, well, just, extend the downspouts and you're going to be good. No, that might work if we get it out past the overdig. But in that situation, you're talking about a perimeter drain tile system. We have to capture the water, put it in a pump, and get it away. But I don't know, and that costs money. And
What's
then
an
it comes back
overdig?
to, say again?
What's an overdig?
What's an overdig? Well, when we build a house, we have to dig a hole that we're going to put the house in, and we're going to make it about 3 feet wider all the way around it. So we're over digging the size that we need. And then we go ahead and build the house, put the foundation back in, and we backfill the dirt.
Because you got to have forms to form up
and we got to put people in there.
The concrete foundations, and you have to put a form on each side. You're not just gonna dig a hole and then pour concrete in one side of it. So you got to dig it out. And what happens when you fill that?
I'm sorry.
in?
What is the point of the extra 3 feet?
So you could put a human being in there, so they could go ahead and put the forms for around the footings and that, and remove them, and they could walk around the whole perimeter. So they got to make it wider than what the house is.
And while you're down there, you stick some drain tile and some felt paper and some gravel.
Dibble board, do everything you can to let that water go down low.
And then what happens when you fill that dirt back in?
Well, the dirt doesn't go back in the same way it came out. All right. So, and this is the part I try to explain to everyone, that we never had a house in that location before this house was built in that location. And that means that as long as this planet was a planet, and I really don't know how long it is, but a gazillion years, that Earth kept compressing. Dinosaurs used to roam this land. It kept compressing. It was tight.
2025 years, my friend.
Thank you very much.
Or no,
what did you just
say?
He's
what are we on the Hebrew
Savior.
calendar? Like 5,000 or something?
I
so
have
5,000.
no idea.
5,000.
Oh my God! All right,
I can't go back that far. I wasn't
Creationism,
here.
baby.
We're
going back.
Joey.
The point is, it's compressed clay that's
listening.
on all this stuff.
So it's killing me.
I know.
When you put the dirt back in, there's air that's in the dirt, right? And when it rains and rains and rains, the dirt that you filled back in, even though when you filled it back in, it looked fine, like it was you put the same dirt that was there before.
That's gonna settle.
You didn't. It's gonna settle, and that's why you almost always end up with that little slight grade that goes toward the foundation because of the ultimate settling of that overdig area. So that's why you
got it. Joey, what happened with the markets?
We already talked
we don't
about
have
that.
time for all that stuff.
He was just talking. I was curious if he has a quick.
The MBS
you got
bits.
something real quick?
Yay or
We
nay?
are out of time.
No, it stayed pretty flat. He didn't say anything crazy. He believes that the Fed's well capitalized, that they're fine with the reserves. So, I mean, if anything, I think it just provides a little bit of assurance to the markets rather than panic.
Cool.
All right. Well,
I'm panicked.
I'm going to go through. Thank you, Steve Davis from Kamar Group, Patrick Loftus from Loftus Law, Joey Mathews from the VA Loan Nerd, and again, my name is Charlie Bellefontaine. Special thank yous to Devin Tingle. He's our producer. And again, my name's Charlie.